Hey, welcome. This is going to be a tour of the Strata Reaper project hierarchy and organization. So when you open a Strata collection, looking at all the tracks and the nested sub projects within the main Reaper project, there's a lot going on. So we just kind of want to dive in and look at how everything is set up so that you can have the best possible experience when you're exploring the demo collection. If you're familiar with Reaper, this is still going to be awesome because you're going to get a look at how incredibly intuitive the architecture, the project design of these collections is. I've come to find that it's really conducive for a multitude of creative workflows, and there's plenty of room for you to take the projects and really start to make them your own over time. So let's take a look at the way that the Strata collections are stored, their folder structure, and then we'll actually open the project up and start playing around a little bit.
The Strata demo project is really pretty impressive in and of itself. There's a lot of content in there. You're going to want to make sure you download that. So head on over to the Strata website and get that so you can kind of follow along with some of these videos.
Okay, so taking a look inside of the main project folder for the Strata sample collection, this is going to be the case with a lot of the Strata collections, the way that this is organized in terms of how it's stored on my drive. So there's a main project, which is this one right here. Then there's going to be a folder with a series of sub-projects. So depending on which part of the collection this is, in our case, these are all sub-projects that contain demonstration material of other to be released Strata collections as of yet. So these all have their own sub-projects within, as you can see, the Reaper project file right there. So I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to go ahead and open up the main project, and then we can kind of begin taking a look at what's inside of it. Here's what my Reaper projects kind of look like when I open them up. And this is what the main project window for the sample collection is going to look like. So as you can see, there's quite a number of these little markers that are visible in different colors. So these are regions, and there's also some markers as well that you can actually see if I zoom in a little bit. So there's on the top some regions, and then there's a marker kind of marking the beginning of a certain part of a collection. In this case, the creature movement collection starts right here. So if I were to put my cursor there, play it, there's going to be a bunch of creature movement tracks in that area. If I look over on the left side of my screen to all the tracks that are in here, we could see that there's essentially color-coded tracks. There's a top level or a parent track, and then there's two tracks underneath of that. The first track underneath here is going to contain the sub-project for the named or associated piece of the collection here. So as we can see, the track name Ethereal Banshee Project, there's this media item on the track. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Reaper, you're kind of probably looking at this and you're just recognizing it as as some sort of audio clip. In our case, Reaper, we refer to them as media items. So you're looking at that, and you can see the waveform there, and you're probably not thinking too much of it, but it's not a reference to an audio file. This is a reference to the sub-projects that we looked at in here, okay? So it's actually this sub-project file on the timeline of our main project setup here. So it can be super convenient. So let's say I'm going to be using some material from the robotic collection anyway later. So let's see what that sounds like. So here's all the material there. Okay. So that's pretty cool. So there is also underneath a rendered preview file. So this is an example file of some of the material that's contained within the sub-project that I haven't opened yet. So it's here for convenience. So if you don't have the project open, or if you're not actively looking at it, or if you're just trying to even figure out if it's something that's going to suit your needs, that's what these files on the second track here are for. So let's go ahead and open up the movement servo stutter subproject. So it's pretty easy. You can just double click it and it will open up in a new tab inside of Reaper. So there's Strata. This is, I can go back to the main project window and, everything's just as I left it. And then here is the movement servo stutter subproject. Cool. So as you can see, there's a number of tracks in here as well, where all the layers of material that were used to create these finalized designed effects are there. I'm going to come back to this in a minute, but in the main project window, I want to kind of show you, because as you can see, the way I've been navigating this project so far is it's relatively kind of clunky. You have to kind of, look for where the regions are, and then you're going to kind of have to put your cursor there if you want to hear something in that particular area. So there's two windows that you should be aware of if you're not familiar with Reaper, but also, these might, even if you are a Reaper user, you might not use these all the time, and they're going to be critical for being able to navigate and get the easiest use out of your Strata collections. So the first window that I want to take a look at is going to be the region manager window. So let me find that. So right here, if you go into view, region marker manager. Now I'm going to go ahead and not open it that way. I have a screen set that I can just switch over to it. Okay, so here is the region marker manager window. As you can see, instead of having to, look at everything on our timeline like we were before, it's all listed right here. The name of the region is, very apparent. There's some other information: start, end, length, render matrix, and some other information. So this way, you can much easier just kind of scroll through this list, click the name, and it will, if we were to go look at the timeline, it would actually put you on that location of the timeline. So if I zoom in, you'll see that's where it has me. The other thing you could do is, if you know what you're looking for and you don't want to even have to scroll through this, there's obviously a search bar at the top. So I could say servo slow. And then obviously I can just kind of click and listen to those pieces of material. And let's take a look at more in depth the tracks and the organizations of the subprojects here. So these subprojects contain all of the source material for the final designed assets that you have in your previews over here. So this right here, if I were to come in here, I should be able to, find that. And then I have access to all the layers of raw recorded props. And not only that, but I also, because we have the plugins and the software that is necessary to get the final design sound, that's all there is as well on the track inserts. So we'll just take a quick minute to look at some of the material here. So there's color coding that is consistent across the entire collection. So in our case, we have a couple of different layers. There's a basic layer, details layer, and then another details layer here as well. We could kind of just listen to these layer by layer. All right, so this is basically just layer one is just servos. That's kind of interesting. And layer two, let's take a listen to that. So there's like some whirring sounds, I'm guessing, depending on which track you're on. So it's like some metal kind of clunky stuff. And actually, if I zoom in, you can actually see what the prop is most times. So we can see it's a trailer hitch. And also, we're using the universal category system for the naming convention of the files, which we'll have a discussion about that in another video. So one thing you will notice is that some sub-projects within these Strata collections will actually have a special track. It's a type of MIDI control track that is basically linked to different insert plugins on certain tracks to automate a interesting parameter. If you're trying to figure out how a sound may work inside of a game, or how you may program a sound to work inside of Wwise, these control tracks are there to kind of maybe act that way, or also to help you, it can also just be used for design in and of itself. So this movement and servo stutter subproject actually does have a track like that in there, which is this stutter control track, which if we take a look at what is present here, there's an automation lane. And I actually did draw in some automation and we could hear what it does. Maybe I'll do this. I'll draw over that so it's not really doing much. So there it's relatively flat. But I could, do something like this. All right, obviously you can hear the stuttering ramping up. And to actually show you what specifically that is controlling, it's on this, definitely on this track, I believe. Yeah. So let me open that up and take a look here. So we have Enrage Stutter on here. And inside this plugin window, take a look at the stutter parameter. And we can see that that's being automated by our MIDI control on the stutter track. So there's going to be other tracks that have similar kind of concepts and functions to create some dynamics for your sounds over time and to help you kind of emulate how it might work as an RTPC inside of Wwise. So that's pretty cool. All right, so starting to kind of wrap things up a little bit. In this case, I've made some changes. Maybe you have certain tracks muted. Maybe we decide, for this version of my movement and servo sounds, I'm going to have this details layer muted, right? So the best thing to do so that you don't, override the way that the Strata collection was presented with the original project file is pretty obvious, but you should do a save as. A lot of the workflows that I'll be kind of demonstrating throughout the videos will involve saving multiple versions of projects, and I'll go into how to manage those a little bit later. And I'll just call this demo video or something like that. All right, and then I can close this, and then I can, if I were to reopen the old one or the original, it's still there, it's still intact the way I left it. Cool. So that's about it for the introduction and the kind of tour sort of video. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of at least what to expect when you're opening it for the first time, regardless of if you're familiar with Reaper projects or not. Hopefully we show you some things that are going to be beneficial to keeping awareness of as you're kind of working and maybe getting used to the particular workflow that could be, kind of generated using a Strata collection. So stay tuned for some of the other video content. The linear design and the nonlinear design videos are going to go a little bit more in depth with some of the things I started showing as far as designing or creating your own versions of sounds. And then we have some examples to tie that to that'll be a little bit more practical. We'll also go into the rendering a little bit more depth in a special video that's just going to focus on that and the universal category system to a certain extent. All right, so thank you, and hopefully you'll stick around and enjoy the rest of what we have to talk about. Be sure to leave some comments and feedback, like the video, and subscribe to the channel so you can see more of this content.